The air in Denver felt heavy that morning when Marcus Brennan walked out of the courthouse with a folder in his hand. Inside were divorce papers, signed and final. For 20 years, he had been married. For 20 years, he had tried to build a steady life as an electrician, working long shifts, saving for a home, and raising his daughter, Emma. But everything had broken apart. His marriage ended, his wife moved to another city, and Emma, now 16, lived mostly with her mother. Marcus felt like a man who had lost his map. His apartment was small, his work was tiring, and his weekends without Emma were quiet to the point of pain. He often sat on his couch, staring at the walls, wondering what went wrong and how he could start again at 40-5. Then, one afternoon, a letter arrived. It was from a law office in Colorado Springs. The letter explained that his uncle Silas Brennan, a man Marcus had not seen in more than a decade, had passed away. Silas had always been the strange one in the family, eccentric, private, living far away in the mountains. He never married, never visited much, and never shared his plans. Marcus only remembered his deep laugh and the smell of pipe smoke whenever Silas visited briefly during childhood holidays. The letter carried a shocking message. Marcus was the heir to Silas's estate. The estate was not money, not a house in town, but 5 acres of land in the mountains of Pine Valley, Colorado. At first, Marcus thought it was a joke. 5 acres of mountain land. Why would Silas leave it to him, of all people? But when he called the attorney, the voice on the other end was serious. "It's yours now, Mr. Brennan. He left everything to you." Marcus drove up to Pine Valley. The following weekend, the road climbed higher and higher, winding through pine trees and sharp cliffs. The air grew cooler, fresher, sharper in his lungs. Finally, he reached the entrance of a subdivision wooden sign that read Pine Valley. Estates in elegant letters. Past the sign were rows of cabins and houses, each sitting neatly in their place, surrounded by tall pines and mountain views. But Marcus's land was a little beyond the subdivision. On the edge where the houses ended and the wilderness began. When he parked his truck and stepped out, he felt silence pressing around him. Birds sang in the trees, and the wind carried the scent of pine needles. His boots crunched on the dirt as he walked to the property line marked by old wooden posts. 5 acres. It was not flat land, but it was beautiful. Slopes of rock and trees, a small stream running down the hill, and at the highest point, a flat spot with a view across the valley. Standing there, Marcus could see the sun breaking through the clouds and lighting the distant ridges. For the first time in years, he felt a flicker of peace. He thought of Emma. She loved hiking. She loved drawing mountains and rivers in her sketchbook. Maybe here, on this land, he could build something new. Not just a building, but a new chapter, a cabin where Emma could visit, where he could heal, where life could feel simple and real again. The next weeks moved quickly. Marcus went back and forth between Denver and Pine Valley, bringing tools, making sketches, clearing brush. He worked with his hands, the way he always did as an electrician, but this time the work was for himself. Each swing of the hammer, each cut of wood, gave him a sense of control he had not felt in years. Neighbors drove by sometimes, watching. Some waved politely, others only stared. Marcus didn't think much of it. He was too focused on laying the foundation, setting beams, planning a small cabin with a porch that looked out at the valley. But peace does not last long when shadows hide in the corners. On a bright morning, as Marcus was hammering planks into place, he heard the crunch of tires on gravel. A black SUV rolled up and stopped near his truck. Out stepped a tall woman in a tailored jacket, her blonde hair pulled tightly back, her eyes sharp as glass. She carried a leather folder under her arm. "Mr. Brennan?" she asked. Marcus nodded, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Yes, that's me." She looked at the half-built cabin behind him and then back at him with a cold smile. "My name is Victoria Ashworth," she said. "I'm the president of the Pine Valley Homeowners Association. We need to talk." The way she said it made Marcus feel like the land beneath his boots had suddenly tilted. Marcus leaned against his hammer, studying the woman in front of him. She looked out of place among the pine's polished shoes, crisp jacket, posture straight as a blade. Her SUV still hummed behind her, the black paint gleaming in the sun. Victoria Ashworth did not waste time on small talk. She opened her leather folder and pulled out a set of papers. "Mr. Brennan," she said firmly, "this structure you're building is not permitted. You are in violation of Pine Valley community covenants. Construction must stop immediately, and the structure will need to be removed." Marcus blinked at her. "Excuse me. This is my land. I inherited it from my uncle. I don't answer to your association." Victoria tilted her head slightly, like a teacher correcting a child. "All properties within Pine Valley fall under the governance of the Homeowners Association. That includes yours. Your cabin does not meet our design standards, and you have not submitted an application for approval. If you continue, you will face fines and legal action." Her voice was smooth but sharp, every word rehearsed. Marcus crossed his arms. "My uncle owned this land long before any subdivision was here. He never mentioned an HOA. Victoria's smile did not waver. "The covenants were established last year, shortly after Mr. Brennan's passing. As his heir, you are bound by them. You'll find that our documents are very clear." She tapped the folder in her hands. Marcus felt a strange heat rising in his chest. Something about this didn't add up. His uncle had been a stubborn man, fiercely private. He doubted Silas would have willingly agreed to community rules about paint colors and porch sizes. "Let me see those papers," Marcus said, reaching for the folder. Victoria pulled it back quickly, shaking her head. "You'll receive your copy in the mail. I came here as a courtesy to warn you. Continuing this construction would be a mistake." She turned toward her SUV, but then paused, glancing over her shoulder with eyes that glinted like ice. "I'll give you 1 week to comply. After that, the board will take further action." The SUV rolled away, leaving a cloud of dust. Marcus stood in the settling quiet, his hammer heavy in his hand, his heart pounding. That night, Marcus sat at his small apartment table in Denver, staring at the notes he had scribbled. HOA covenants, 1 year old, after Silas's death. None of it made sense. He pulled out the folder from Silas's lawyer, the deed, the property map, the will. Nothing in those documents mentioned an HOA. He tried calling the Pine Valley HOA. Office number listed online. The call went to voicemail. A recorded message in Victoria's clipped voice. "You've reached Pine Valley Estates Association. Leave a message and we'll return your call during business hours." Marcus didn't bother leaving a message. Instead, he drove back to the property the next morning. His cabin frame still stood, silent and waiting. But something felt different. 2 neighbors were walking by slowly, whispering as they passed. A man in a red cap paused to stare, then shook his head before continuing on. Marcus ignored them and went back to work. But by noon he noticed something odd. His truck's tires looked low. When he bent down, he found small slashes in the rubber, almost invisible but enough to cause slow leaks. His jaw tightened. Coincidence or a warning? He drove carefully to the nearest repair shop, had the tires replaced, and returned the next day. This time, he found a bright orange paper stapled to one of his posts. Notice of violation, unauthorized construction. Fines will accrue daily. Compliance required. Pine Valley, HOA. Marcus crumpled the notice in his fist. He could almost hear Victoria's cold voice behind the typed words. That evening, he called his daughter Emma. She answered with the usual teenage mix of warmth and distance. "Hey Dad, what's up?" Marcus hesitated. He didn't want to sound defeated, but he needed her voice. "Just working on something. You remember Uncle Silas, the one in the mountains?" "Yeah, kinda. Mom said he was weird." Marcus chuckled softly. "Yeah, he was different. He left me some land. I'm building a cabin. Thought maybe you'd want to come up when it's ready." Emma's tone brightened. "A cabin in the mountains. That sounds cool." Marcus smiled, imagining her drawing in her sketchbook by the stream. He didn't mention Victoria, the notices, or the slashed tires. He didn't want Emma to hear worry in his voice. After the call, Marcus sat outside on the porch of his half-built cabin, staring at the dark line of trees against the fading sky. He felt a storm brewing not in the weather, but in the air of Pine Valley itself, and deep inside, a question kept circling like a hawk. What game was Victoria Ashworth really playing? The next weekend, Marcus drove back to Pine Valley with fresh determination. He was not the kind of man who backed down easily, especially when something smelled wrong. His cabin stood quiet among the pines, the frame reaching toward the sky like a skeleton waiting for life. He touched the beams, checking them for damage, half expecting someone to have sabotaged them. But everything was intact, at least for now. As he unpacked his tools, he noticed a pair of eyes watching him from the road. A man in his 60s, wiry with a grey beard, leaned against a mailbox across the gravel. After a moment, the man gave a small nod and walked over. "You must be Brennan," the man said, voice low and steady. "Name's Tom Richards. I live to lots down." Marcus shook his hand. Tom's grip was firm, but his eyes carried a kind of weariness, like someone who had seen too much. "Listen," Tom continued, words spreading fast. "Folks are saying Victoria's coming after you hard. You ought to be careful." Marcus frowned. "Why? What's her problem?" "This is my land." Tom glanced around as if the trees might be listening. "That woman runs the HOA like a little kingdom. People are scared of her. She fines them for leaving trash cans out too long. She makes them repaint their doors if the color isn't approved. Some neighbors fell behind on dust she threatened foreclosure. Folks don't fight back, because if they do, suddenly their cars get keyed or the sheriff shows up at their door. Sheriff's her brother-in-law, you know." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "So this isn't just about me." Tom shook his head. "Nope. She's been bleeding people for years. But you," he pointed at Marcus's half-built cabin, "you're a threat. You're new, you're independent, and you're not afraid to swing a hammer. She can't control that." Marcus nodded slowly. Tom's words made sense. He thought back to the slashed tires, the violation notice, Victoria's cold smile. Later that day, while Marcus worked on the cabin, a different kind of visitor arrived. A woman in her 40s with kind eyes and 2 small children walked up the path. She introduced herself as Mary Collins. "I just wanted to say," she whispered, glancing nervously toward the road, Not everyone agrees with the HOA. A lot of us feel trapped. Victoria, she has a way of making life miserable if you step out of line, but don't let her scare you. Some of us are glad you're here. Her children tugged at her hands, eager to leave. Mary gave Marcus a quick smile before hurrying away, as if even talking to him was dangerous. That night, Marcus stayed in his truck near the cabin, watching the shadows move across the land. The forest was peaceful, but the quiet roads carried tension, like every porch light hid a pair of eyes. He thought of Emma and how she would see all of this if she came to visit. He didn't want her to be caught in the crossfire of someone else's power games. The following morning, Marcus drove into town to check public records. The county clerk's office was a dull building with grey walls and tired fluorescent lights, but Marcus spent hours combing through folders, maps, and property deeds. What he found made his pulse quicken. The Pine Valley Homeowners Association had indeed been formed only months after Silas's death. Before that, no record of it existed. The covenants were dated, stamped, and filed neatly, but the timing was suspicious. How could rules suddenly apply to land that had never been part of the subdivision before? Marcus copied the documents, tucking them into his own folder. He didn't have the full picture yet, but the pieces were falling into place. When he returned to his land, another orange notice was stapled to his cabin frame. This one demanded immediate payment of fines, $1,250, due within 7 days. Marcus tore it down and crushed it in his hand. He could almost hear Victoria laughing somewhere in her perfect house, believing she had him cornered. But Marcus Brennan was not a man who folded under pressure. He had lived through a divorce that tore his life apart. He had rebuilt himself, with nothing but his hands and stubbornness. Now, staring at the mountains around him, he made a quiet vow. He would find out what Victoria Ashworth was hiding. And when he did, he would bring her whole scheme crashing down. The shadows of the HOA were real, but Marcus was ready to step into them. The next week unfolded like a tightening vice around Marcus. It started small. A garbage bag ripped open across his driveway one morning, spilling rotten food, chicken bones, and coffee grounds. At first, he thought maybe animals had gotten into someone's trash, but when he cleaned it up, he noticed something strange. The bag wasn't his. It had a label from a different brand than the ones he used. Someone had dumped it there on purpose. Then came the social media posts. Marcus didn't use Facebook much, but one of his co-workers pulled him aside at lunch. "Hey man, you see what they're saying about you online?" On the Pine Valley Community Group page, a thread ran with the headline, "Is this man dangerous?" Photos of Marcus's half-built cabin were attached, along with blurry shots of Marcus himself hammering beams. The caption accused him of building illegally, squatting on land that didn't belong to him, and even hinted he had a violent past. Comments poured in. "He doesn't belong here. Typical outsider thinks he can do what he wants. I heard he was arrested once." Marcus's chest burned reading the lies. He had never been arrested in his life. Someone was feeding poison into the community, and he didn't need to guess who was behind it. That weekend, when Emma came to visit, Marcus tried to hide the tension. She arrived with her sketchbook and a bright smile, her brown hair pulled into a ponytail. "Wow, Dad, it's really coming along," she said, running her fingers along the wood beams. Marcus forced a grin. "Still a long way to go, but it'll be ours. A place to breathe." They spent the day painting boards, laughing, and sitting by the stream. For a moment, the world felt normal. But late that night, as Emma slept in the truck, Marcus heard crunching footsteps outside. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped out. In the beam of light, he caught a figure darting into the trees. When Marcus reached the edge of the forest, he found his cabin doorframe splattered with red paint. The word trespasser dripped down the wood. Emma woke to find him scrubbing at the stain. Her eyes widened. "Dad, what happened?" "Just kids. Messing around," Marcus lied. Nothing to worry about. But inside, his blood boiled. The following Monday, Marcus received an envelope in the mail. Inside was a letter signed by Victoria Ashworth herself. "Mr. Brennan, due to your repeated violations and failure to comply with Pine Valley HOA standards, the association is filing a petition to have you removed from the community. You are hereby ordered to cease residence on the property pending review. Failure to comply will result in legal action and sheriff involvement." At the bottom, in elegant script, was Victoria's signature. Marcus slammed the letter on his kitchen table. She wasn't just harassing him. She was trying to erase him. He called the county courthouse, demanding answers. The clerk hesitated before explaining. "The HOA filed a petition claiming your cabin sits on restricted land. It will go before a judge next month." Marcus's mind spun. Restricted land. That was his uncle's property, left to him fair and square. Unless the HOA had forged or manipulated documents. The next weekend, things turned darker. Marcus returned to his land to find his tools scattered, his lumber pile kicked over, and his water jugs punctured and empty. But the worst was the dead rabbit nailed to one of his posts, a cruel, silent warning. For the first time, Marcus felt fear crawl down his spine. This was no longer petty harassment. This was intimidation. That night, he sat by the stream with Emma, who had insisted on sketching the stars. "Dad," she said softly, "why are they doing this to you?" Marcus looked at his daughter, her young face lit by moonlight. He wanted to protect her from the truth, but he also wanted her to see his strength. "Because some people don't like when others stand up to them," he said. "But you know what? We don't bend to bullies. Not now, not ever." Emma nodded, her eyes shining with trust, and as Marcus watched her draw, he made a silent promise. Victoria Ashworth could throw every trick she had at him, but he would not give up his land. Not for her, not for anyone. What he didn't know yet was that the deeper he dug, the more dangerous her secrets would become. Marcus was not a man who enjoyed paperwork. He preferred wires, beams, and things he could fix with his hands. But after weeks of harassment, after paint on his cabin, slashed tires, and that chilling dead rabbit, he realized something important. If he wanted to beat Victoria Ashworth, he couldn't just fight with fists or anger. He needed proof, so he drove to the county courthouse again. The clerk behind the counter, a tired woman with glasses, looked up when Marcus walked in. "Back again?" she asked. "Yeah," Marcus said, setting his notebook on the desk. "I need to see every record related to Brennan Holdings, Silas, Brennan, and Pine Valley Estates." The woman sighed but led him into the back, where rows of filing cabinets and digital terminals stretched in long lines. Marcus sat down at a computer, his calloused hands awkward on the keyboard, and began digging. Hours passed. His eyes blurred from scrolling through scanned deeds, leases, and corporate filings. But then something caught his attention. Brennan Holdings LLC. He clicked. His uncle's name was listed as the sole owner. The company's assets, dozens of parcels of land in Pine Valley, including not just Marcus's 5 acres, but the ground beneath nearly every house in the subdivision. Marcus's breath caught. He leaned closer to the screen. It was all their records dating back 20 years, carefully kept and legally solid. Silas hadn't just owned a piece of the mountain. He had owned the land beneath the homes that now lined the neat streets of Pine Valley, which meant the homeowners weren't really landowners. They were tenants, renting without even knowing it. Marcus printed copies, his hands trembling. This was bigger than he imagined. No wonder Victoria wanted him gone. If the truth came out, her power over the community would crumble. As he packed up, he noticed something else. The HOA covenants, the ones Victoria had waved in his face, were dated 3 months after Silas's death. The ink wasn't even dry when she started binding people under her rules. Marcus walked out of the courthouse into the crisp mountain air, his folder heavy with evidence. For the first time, he felt the ground shift in his favor. But he also knew one thing. If Victoria discovered what he now held, she would stop at nothing to silence him. Back at his cabin site, Marcus spread the documents on the hood of his truck. Tom Richards wandered over, his brow furrowed. "What you got there?" Tom asked. "Proof," Marcus said, tapping the papers. "My uncle owned this whole place. Not just my land, the ground under all of it. These covenants Victoria keeps, pushing their fake. She had them written up after he died." Tom whistled low. "You're telling me all of us are living on land your uncle owned?" "Not just that," Marcus said. "Now it belongs to me." Tom's eyes widened, then narrowed. "You realize what this means? Folks thought they owned their homes free and clear. If this gets out, I don't want to hurt anyone," Marcus said quickly. "I'm not here to take houses. But this explains why she's been coming after me. She's hiding something. She knew about these deeds, and she's been bleeding people dry through the HOA anyway. It's fraught, plain and simple." Tom rubbed his beard, glancing around nervously. "Careful, Brennan. If she senses you've got dirt on her, she'll come at you harder. She's got the sheriff in her pocket, remember?" Marcus nodded. "Then I'll be ready." That night, he couldn't sleep. He sat in his truck with a flashlight, poring over every detail of the documents. His uncle Silas had been eccentric, sure, but he had also been smart. Maybe he had always planned for Marcus to inherit more than just a cabin site. Maybe he had known the fight that would follow. Suddenly, headlights cut across the trees. Marcus killed his flashlight and ducked low. A pickup truck crawled by, its engine rumbling, slowing as it passed his cabin. He couldn't see the driver, but he felt the weight of the stare. After a moment, the truck sped off into the night. Marcus's gut told him it wasn't random. Word had already started to spread, and he knew without question that Victoria would make her next move soon. The air smelled like pine and wet earth, but something else lingered, a tension that made Marcus's skin prickle. Victoria Ashworth had stepped up her game. He knew it. Her threats were no longer hidden behind papers or posts. Now, she was playing with fire, literally. It began with small signs. One morning, Marcus found scorch marks on the edge of his cabin's foundation. At first, he thought maybe someone had tossed a cigarette carelessly. But soon, the incidents escalated. The night came when Marcus was returning from town with supplies. His headlights caught a flicker of orange and red near the back of his cabin. Panic gripped him. He jumped out of the truck, running toward the flames. Victoria's son, a tall, gangly teen with a cruel smirk, held a small gasoline can. He froze when he saw Marcus, but only for a second. Marcus's camera, which he had installed for security after the paint incident, captured every moment. The boy bolted into the forest, leaving behind the burning pile of kindling meant for the fire pit. Marcus stomped out the flames, his heart racing. Emma, who had stayed in the truck, emerged with wide eyes. "Dad, what was that?" "I don't know yet," Marcus said tightly. "But we're going to find out." The next day, Marcus delivered the footage to Sarah Kim, a sharp attorney from Denver who had agreed to help him. Sarah's eyes widened as she reviewed the video. "This isn't just harassment," she said slowly. "This is attempted arson. And if we have proof that Victoria or her family were involved, that changes everything you've been dealing with. Criminal behavior disguised as HOA enforcement." Marcus nodded. "She's been manipulating the sheriff too. Threats, false petitions about mental health, all of it. And now this." Sarah leaned back. "Then it's time we hit hard. We need to gather every shred of evidence. The covenants, HOA, finances, emails, receipts, anything forged. If we can show the authorities a pattern of harassment and fraud, Victoria Ashworth is going down." Meanwhile, in the shadows, Victoria paced her living room, reading Marcus's latest social media post where he casually mentioned completing part of his cabin foundation. She slammed her hand against the table. "Why won't he just go away?" she hissed. Her son, still nervous from being caught, tried to protest. "Mom, I didn't mean quiet," Victoria snapped. "You almost ruined everything. That man will pay for this. Every trick we have left, we use it. The sheriff will file the petitions tomorrow, and if that doesn't work..." Marcus, unaware of Victoria's plotting, spent the following week digging into more public records. He discovered discrepancies in the HOA's finances, monthly dues missing from bank statements, inflated charges for maintenance that never happened, and forged signatures on certain filings. Every page he scanned, every photo he took, and every video clip he saved built a puzzle, and the picture was clear. Victoria Ashworth had created a corrupt empire, exploiting neighbors while attempting to force Marcus off his rightful land. Late one evening, Marcus called Tom Richards and a few other neighbors who had quietly voiced dissent. "We need to stand together," Marcus said. "She's been using fear and lies to control everyone, but we can't let her keep doing it. We have proof, now proof, of her crimes, and we need to be ready when we expose her." Tom rubbed his chin. "You really think people will turn against her?" "I know they will," Marcus replied. "Once the truth comes out, there's no going back. She can't hide this anymore." The storm was approaching. Marcus could feel it, not a weather storm, but the one that would finally shake Pine Valley to its core and deep in the forest. As he prepared for the legal fight ahead, Marcus glanced at his cabin, sturdy and defiant against the mountain wind. He whispered to himself, "They may try to burn this down, but they will never burn me out." The following weeks were a blur of investigation, meetings, and quiet determination. Marcus and Sarah Kim worked like a single machine, sifting through county records, HOA financials, and property deeds. Every discovery seemed to reveal another thread in Victoria Ashworth's web of deception. Marcus had never imagined that the corruption could reach so far. HOA dues had been pocketed by Victoria personally. Contractors listed on the association's invoices were either fake companies or family members charging outrageous fees. Even the covenants she waved at Marcus. Many were forged or altered after the fact to give the illusion of legality. One afternoon, As Marcus scanned through bank records in his cabin, Sarah interrupted his concentration. "Marcus, you need to see this," she said, holding a thick folder. "I've cross-referenced the HOA's finances with public records. She's been skimming hundreds of thousands over the past 5 years. And it's not just small stuff. This is organized, deliberate. Fraud." Marcus felt a surge of anger mixed with relief. Anger at Victoria, but relief that finally the truth could be exposed. "We need witnesses," Sarah continued. "Neighbors who have seen the harassment, the sabotage, or any suspicious activity. Video evidence helps, but personal testimony makes the case stronger." Marcus nodded. "I can talk to Tom and Mary. There are others too. People are scared, but they'll come around if they see we have proof." And they did. Slowly, carefully, Marcus approached the neighbors he had met, the ones who had whispered support from behind closed doors. Tom Richards, Mary Collins, and a few others agreed to share their experiences, recounting fines, threats, and intimidation from the HOA. As the days passed, Marcus's folder grew heavier. The attempted arson, forged covenants, financial fraud, false mental health petitions, and threats to his safety, all documented meticulously. Then came the breakthrough. Marcus and Sarah discovered one final piece of evidence, an email chain between Victoria and her son, discussing ways to intimidate him, and even referencing the cabin construction directly. It was explicit, undeniable, and linked Victoria to the criminal actions that had escalated from harassment to attempted arson. Sarah leaned back, exhaling slowly. This is it. This is the smoking gun. With this, federal investigators will have no choice but to act. Marcus felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He had been building his case quietly, waiting for the right moment. Now, that moment had arrived. The following week, federal investigators arrived in Pine Valley. Agents with sharp eyes and serious expressions began reviewing Marcus's files, interviewing neighbors, and examining the cabin site. News of their presence spread quickly through the subdivision. Victoria's confidence cracked almost immediately. She made calls, pacing through her living room, her voice tight with tension. The sheriff, her brother-in-law, could do little to interfere. Now federal jurisdiction over fraud and arson left him powerless. The neighbors watched silently as investigators methodically documented everything. Many who had once been afraid felt a quiet surge of hope. For the first time, they realized that Victoria's empire was vulnerable. Finally, Sarah and Marcus met with the lead investigator. "Everything is consistent," the agent said. "Fraud, intimidation, criminal behavior. We'll move forward with arrests and charges." Marcus let out a long breath. Months of stress, fear, and uncertainty were finally turning into justice. But he didn't celebrate, not yet. He knew the next steps were just as important, ensuring the community could recover, and that Victoria could not find another way to harm them. That night, Marcus walked his land with Emma. She held his hand, noticing the quiet confidence in his stride. "Dad," she said softly, "do you think it's really over?" Marcus looked out at the mountains, the trees swaying in the breeze. "Not yet, Emma, but the pieces are falling into place. We're getting there. And when it is over, we're going to make things right, not just for us, but for everyone here." The shadows of Pine Valley were finally lifting, revealing the dawn of a new beginning. The morning sunlight spilled across the Pine Valley subdivision, but it couldn't brighten the tension that gripped the streets. Word had spread. Victoria Ashworth was under federal investigation, Rumors raced through the neighborhood like wildfire. Marcus arrived at his cabin early, his mind calm but focused. He knew that exposure was the key. Victoria thrived on secrecy. Today, the truth would finally reach the people she had manipulated for years. Soon, the investigators called a meeting at the community center. Residents shuffled in, whispering nervously, eyes darting toward Victoria, who sat stiffly at the front of the room. Her face, usually painted with confidence, was pale. She glanced at Marcus once, then quickly looked away, a hint of fear flickering in her eyes. The lead federal agent stepped forward, speaking clearly. "We have gathered extensive evidence of fraud, intimidation, and criminal activity perpetrated by the Pine Valley Homeowners Association under the leadership of Victoria Ashworth. This includes forged documents, financial embezzlement, attempted arson, and harassment." Gasps filled the room. Murmurs rose into panic. Victoria's mouth opened, then closed. She tried to speak, but no words came. One by one, the agent presented evidence. The forged HOA covenants dated after Silas Brennan's death, financial records showing embezzlement of dues, video footage of her son attempting arson to frame Marcus, testimonies from neighbors describing intimidation, threats, and fines levied without cause. Each revelation landed like a hammer. The community, once fearful, now felt betrayal and outrage. They realized how long they had been manipulated, coerced, and robbed of trust. Victoria's shoulders slumped. The veneer of power that had shielded her for years crumbled in real time. For the first time, she was powerless. Marcus watched quietly, standing with Emma by his side. He felt a mixture of relief and sorrow for himself, for the community, and for the loss of innocence in a neighborhood once full of promise. As the meeting ended, federal agents informed Victoria that she was under arrest. She was handcuffed and led out, her gaze darting to the residents, many of whom avoided eye contact entirely, unwilling to face the woman who had ruled them with fear. Outside, neighbors gathered, whispering among themselves. Tom Richards shook Marcus's hand. "You did it, Marcus. You didn't just fight for your land, you fought for all of us." Marcus nodded, but he knew the real work was only beginning. Victoria was gone, but the community needed rebuilding. Trust had been broken. Fear had been planted deep. That evening, Marcus stood on his cabin porch, looking over the subdivision. Lights glimmered in homes where fear had once ruled. He imagined the possibilities: lower rents, fair ownership opportunities, a place where neighbors could talk, help, and rebuild together. Emma leaned against him, her sketchbook in hand. "Dad, do you think we can really fix it?" Marcus smiled softly. "We can, Emma. One step at a time. We've taken the first step by bringing the truth to light. Now we make sure everyone has a fair chance to thrive." The sun set over the mountains, casting long shadows that slowly faded as darkness gave way to a calm, promising night. Pine Valley, once a community ruled by fear, had begun its journey toward healing. And Marcus Brennan, the man who inherited 5 acres and a fight he hadn't asked for, realized something profound. The battle was never just about land. It was about justice, resilience, and the power of truth. With Victoria Ashworth behind bars, Pine Valley residents cautiously stepped into a new reality. The oppressive weight of her tyranny had lifted, but what remained was the damage she had done: mistrust, fear, and years of financial exploitation. Marcus knew the real challenge wasn't defeating her. It was rebuilding the community she had broken. The first step was transparency. Marcus, with the help of Sarah Kim, organized a series of town hall meetings. He presented the truth about land ownership. Every homeowner had been unknowingly renting the land beneath their homes from Brennan Holdings LLC. The initial reaction was shock, followed by anger, and then an unusual form of relief. The residents realized they had been manipulated, but now, at least, the truth was out. Marcus explained his vision clearly: lower rents to fair market value, giving residents financial breathing room, offer the chance for homeowners to purchase the land under their homes if they chose, ensuring true ownership, establish a legal aid fund for anyone facing HOA harassment, so no one would be left defenseless. The meetings were emotional. Neighbors, who had once avoided each other out of fear, began speaking, sharing stories, and supporting one another. Mary Collins, who had quietly helped Marcus from the beginning, spoke passionately about hope and rebuilding. Tom Richards proposed a community oversight committee to ensure transparency and prevent future abuse. The transformation was not immediate, but it was steady. Marcus oversaw renovations to neglected community areas, repaired damage left from sabotage, and encouraged cooperative efforts among neighbors. Slowly, Pine Valley began to feel like a real community again, not a playground for someone's personal power trip. Marcus also focused on mentorship and education. He taught neighbors about their rights, property law basics, and ways to recognize and fight HOA abuses. He wanted Pine Valley to become a model for other communities facing similar corruption. A living example that knowledge, persistence, and courage could overcome fear. Emma thrived in this environment. She began documenting her father's work and the community's rebirth in her sketches, which captured moments of rebuilding, laughter, and cooperation. Her growth mirrored the revival of Pine Valley, from fear to hope, from isolation to connection. Marcus often reflected on his journey. He hadn't sought revenge. His goal was never personal gain beyond securing his rightful inheritance. By focusing on fairness, compassion, and justice, he had created something stronger than victory, a foundation for a resilient, empowered community. And as he walked the now peaceful streets of Pine Valley, Marcus realized something profound. The fight against corruption had ended, but the real victory was in what came next: the healing, the unity, and the knowledge that truth had prevailed. Winter had melted into spring, and Pine Valley glowed with renewed life. Birds sang in the trees, streams gurgled clear water, and the mountains seemed brighter, as if celebrating the community's hard-earned peace. Marcus stood on the porch of his completed cabin, a sturdy, welcoming home now framed by flowers and a small garden he and Emma had planted. The cabin was more than a building. It was a symbol of resilience, hope, and the victory of truth over fear. Emma, now confident and bright, ran round the yard, laughing with other children who had begun to feel safe in a neighborhood once ruled by intimidation. She carried her sketchbook everywhere, documenting life in Pine Valley, just the beauty of the mountains, but the story of a community reborn. Neighbors often visited, not to complain, but to offer help, share meals, or discuss improvements. The town hall meetings continued, now focused on cooperation rather than conflict. The legal aid fund Marcus had established was active, guiding residents and other communities facing HOA corruption. Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The harassment, the threats, the attempted arson, and the lizage had tested him in ways he never expected. Yet, every challenge had forged a stronger sense of purpose. He had learned lessons that extended beyond property and law. Courage mattered more than fear. Persistence could reveal hidden truths. Justice was not just about punishment, but about building something better. Compassion could transform adversaries into allies, and suffering into strength. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Marcus sat with Emma under the stars. She pointed to a sketch she had just completed, a panoramic view of Pine Valley, the cabin, and the community in harmony. "Dad," she said softly, "I think we've really changed this place." Marcus smiled, squeezing her hand. "We have, Emma, and we'll keep making it better, not just here, but wherever people need help. We've learned that one person standing for what's right can change a lot of lives." The mountains stood tall and quiet, witnesses to the journey of a man who had inherited land, faced corruption, and emerged not only victorious but purposeful. Pine Valley was no longer a place of fear, it was a beacon of justice, unity, and possibility. As Marcus and Emma watched the stars, he felt the weight of the past lift completely. The story of harassment, deceit, and struggle had ended, but its lessons would live on, not just in Pine Valley, but in every life he touched through the Legal Aid Fund and the community initiatives he planned to expand nationwide. Marcus Brennan, the electrician who had once merely wanted a fresh start, had become a guardian of justice, a builder of communities, and a living example that truth, patience, and courage could overcome even the most entrenched corruption. And with that, the mountains of Colorado, the cabin, and the people of Pine Valley embraced a future filled with promise, a legacy of integrity, resilience, and new beginnings.